Okay, so for this part of the filter session we are going to look at changing a fairly cloudy sky into more of a nighttime stormy sky, and we're going to look at adding some light into it afterwards as well. Okay, so I'll go through it at a reasonable pace so that you guys can stop and pause and rewind as you see fit. Okay, so this is our image. It's got quite a bit of cloud in there, but it's definitely too light for what we want. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the background layer, and we are going to adjust what's called the curve. So image adjustments, curves, and it's entirely up to you what you pick. I'm going to go for this sort of S shape. It's going to bring out some of the light and dark, and if you ever want to see what your filters are doing, a lot of them have this little preview box here, so you can tick it and tick it. So you can see already it's starting to bring up quite a lot of darkness, so the ground looks like it could be at night time already. So we're going to OK that, and we're going to create a copy of this new layer, and we're going to call this blur. I need to get into the habit of naming my layers, so we'll call this one curves. We'll see how long this naming lasts. So as the name suggests, we are going to apply a radial blur. Okay, so the default setting will be this kind of spin effect, and the value will be 10, but what we want is a zoom to create perspective, and we're going to give the amount as 80, I think, and then we're going to do that. Okay, so you can see already that it's created a blurred effect. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to pick best for the quality. Okay, just give it a little bit of increased quality. I'm going to set the blending mode of this to multiply so that it does blend in with the one underneath. Again, if I hide it and show it, you can see that it is already starting to have the sort of effect that we want. Okay, we're now going to generate some clouds over the top of this. Difference clouds and clouds in Photoshop are excellent for creating loads of things, except clouds, because they just don't look like clouds. But we are going to use them, and we're going to tweak them. So first of all, I'm going to do some regular clouds, and we're going to do some difference clouds. Difference clouds work the same way as the normal clouds, except they focus on areas that have a change in colour. We're going to use this for the lightning as well. Okay, so create some difference clouds there. I'm going to adjust the levels to bring out the light and dark. So feel free to use your own settings, but the ones I'm going to use are 30, this is for the RGB, 30, 0.75 and 175. Okay, and we're going to set the blending mode of this to colour dodge. Okay, so again we can see that we've started to create a little bit of contrast in there. It also gives us some good places for lightning to originate from. The only issue at the moment is it's still quite flat, so I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to change the perspective of this layer. So edit, transform, perspective, and I'm going to click and drag, and if you look at the top, the percentage for the width is changing, and I want it 200-ish. So let's go about there, press enter. Okay, so with this layer selected, we are going to make a selection by the channels. So what we have is we have let's go to fit on there. we have our RGB channel, and then we have them individually. And even though you can't see much red in that image, there is content on the red channel. So if we can control click the red channel, it will select what we see as a lot of the lighter part of the image. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select inverse, so that we end up having a lot of the darker parts of the image selected. And we're also going to feather. Okay, so to feather the selection means we're just going to soften the edges a little bit, and we're going to just pick a reasonable value. 10's fine, so we'll just press OK. Okay, with the selection made, if we create a layer mask with the selection made, it will automatically mask that selection. So if we do that, it will soften what we've just created. If I right click and disable this layer mask, you can see that it has just softened some of those brighter parts. Okay, we're going to adjust the levels of the mask, so we need to make sure that we've got the mask selected, not the layer. We need the actual mask. So adjustments levels, we're going to keep this at 0. And then we're going to keep that we're going to change that, sorry, to 1.7, and then change the last one to 180. And again, that's just going to give it a slightly nicer effect. If you want, you can tweak the mask with a brush. I'm not sure if I'm going to or not. I'm going to give it a go. So I've got a brush, soft brush with black as the colour, with the mask selected, and if you just go over various parts, you can see it masking certain things out. I'm not going to do it because I quite like it how it is, but if you guys want to do that, that's absolutely fine. So for the most part, we're done for the sky. If you do overall want to change the way it looks, we can add an adjustment layer. So if we click on the little adjustment layer button here, we've got brightness and contrast, and we can change the brightness, we can bring it a little bit darker, increase the contrast. Entirely up to you. You just keep the settings as you wish. Okay, so that's us for the sky, and now we're just going to create some lightning. So I'm going to create a blank layer, and I'm going to draw a rectangular marquee. It's actually going to be a square, and I'm going to make it a lot bigger than I want the lightning to be, because if it's bigger, it's easier to make it smaller afterwards. We're going to use our gradient tool, which is the same button as the paint bucket, and we're going to make sure that our foreground colour and our background colour are black and white. So the way that we do this is we're going to generate difference clouds where there is a change in colour, which is why we're using this gradient. So if we had our gradient like this, there's so much of a change in colour that you wouldn't get anything that looked like a bolt of lightning. Likewise, if we did this, it's so straight that that is exactly what your lightning would look like. There's no room for manoeuvre. So what we want is, and I'm doing it roughly in the direction I want the lightning to go, we want something that's going to have a little bit of change in colour, but also it's going to have significant area of black and white. Okay, so once we've done that, we can then create our difference clouds, and what we should get is a slightly distorted line. Okay, the more the colour difference, the more there will be in that line, but I want to go for slightly bigger gradient, but not too much, and just keep playing about with it until you get something that you like. Okay, now obviously at the moment the lightning is black and the sky is light and the clouds are light, so we want to invert that for a start. And then if we change our levels, what we should be able to do is bring out this white line down the middle and get rid of a lot of these clouds. So if we go to image adjustments levels, we're going to put that at 40, put that at 0.15, and we're going to leave the final one at 255. Okay, so if you've done the blending modes part of this previously, you should know that the screen blending mode gets rid of a lot of the darks and keeps the lights, so that's the one we're going to use. So if I change that to screen and edit free transform, I'm going to put this where I want it. I'm going to get it going through a light part of the sky, and I'm also going to get it going over the ground there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask, because you should be able to see, although the lighting looks good, you can still see a lot of the edges of the square. So soft brush, quite a large brush. Okay, so with the larger soft brush, I'm just going to mask out the edges of the square like that. Okay, I'm also going to mask out with this brush this bit, so that it does look like it's coming from that lighter part of the sky, and not just out of nowhere. And then with a much smaller brush, I'm going to mask out up to that hill there. Okay, just to show that again quickly, I create a new layer. Just again, gradient. You could duplicate, but difference clouds are quite random, so if you do another one, it will be slightly different, which will obviously give it a much more natural effect. So change the levels again. Got 40, 0.15 and screen. So for this one I'm going to swap it over, flip horizontal. I'm going to free transform, I'm going to create a mask again. So start out with a big brush, which was about 100 and something. I'm going to mask a lot of this. And then I'm going to create that much smaller brush, and we are going to create a fork type of lighting. Okay, now obviously the longer you guys spend on this, the more realistic you'll be able to make it, and the better shapes you'll get for your lighting. So I'll be honest, I'm not very happy with this one. If I'd have done a bigger gradient, it would have been slightly more natural shape. That looks a bit straight to me, but you get the idea.